My name is Linda, and for most of my life, I was the dependable one. The one who worked overtime while others made excuses. The one who paid her bills early. The one who didn't ask for help because I didn't want to owe anyone anything. So when I finally bought my penthouse at 61, it wasn't about luxury. It was about silence, safety, control over my own space for the first time in my life. At least, that's what I thought. My sister Diane had always lived differently. She floated from one crisis to the next, dragging her kids along and expecting someone, usually me, to soften the landing. When I bought the penthouse, she congratulated me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "Must be nice." I should have heard the warning in her tone. At first, it was small things. I'd come home and notice the air felt different, warmer, like someone had been there. A mug in the sink I didn't remember using. The throw blanket folded the wrong way. Once, a bedroom drawer was open just an inch. I told myself I was imagining it. Then my concierge mentioned seeing my sister's kids in the elevator while I was at work. "They said they were visiting their aunt," he said casually. My stomach dropped. I confronted Diane gently at first. She admitted she still had my spare key, the one I'd given her years ago, just in case. "They're just kids, Linda," she laughed. "They like the view." I asked her to return the key. She never did. The visits became bolder. Food disappeared. A watch went missing. Once, I walked in on her teenage son sprawled on my couch, shoes on, eating takeout like he owned the place. That night, I didn't sleep. I realized something chilling. They didn't see my home as mine. They saw it as family property, something I didn't deserve alone. I threatened to call the police. Diane cried. She yelled. She reminded me of every favor she'd ever done for me, real or imagined. She told me I'd destroy the family if I embarrassed her. So I stopped arguing. Instead, I started planning. I found a new place quietly, smaller, safer, no spare keys, no shared address. I packed only what mattered while they were busy living their lives like nothing was wrong. And then one Friday afternoon, I left. I didn't warn them. I didn't explain. I didn't say goodbye. What I did instead would finally force them to learn a lesson they'd avoided their entire lives. And the moment the police called me, I knew I had done the right thing. The police didn't call me right away. That was the part that surprised me most. I had just finished unpacking the essentials in my new place, a modest condo in a quieter building, one where nobody knew my name yet. I was standing in the kitchen, holding a mug I hadn't even filled, when my phone finally rang. Unknown number. I knew before I answered. "This is Officer Reynolds with the City Police Department. Am I speaking with Linda?" My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "Yes." "We responded to a break-in at a residence you own. The occupants claimed they had permission to be there, but the property is currently vacant. Do you know these individuals?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said carefully. "They're my sister's children. They do not have permission to be there." There was a pause on the line, a long one. "Ma'am," he said, "they forced entry." Something inside me cracked, not with guilt, but with confirmation. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't overreacted. They hadn't just used my home. They'd crossed a line the moment my key stopped working. Because yes, I'd changed the locks before I left. The officer continued, "There's property damage, and your sister arrived on scene and became uncooperative." I exhaled slowly. "I won't be pressing charges," I said, "but I do want them formally trespassed." Another pause. Then, "Understood." When the call ended, I sat down on the floor. Not because I was weak, but because 62 years of swallowing everyone else's mess had finally stopped. Diane called me 12 times that night. I didn't answer. Voicemails piled up. Her voice bounced between rage and tears. "You set us up! How could you do this to your own family?" "You're heartless, Linda." By morning, the family group chat had exploded. My niece accused me of ruining her brother's future. My cousin said I should have handled it privately. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in years told me I'd embarrassed the family name. Not one person asked what it had been like for me. Not one. So I finally typed one message and sent it to everyone. I asked for my key back. I asked for boundaries. You ignored me. This is the result. Then I left the chat. Diane showed up at my old building 2 days later, screaming at the concierge, demanding to know where I'd gone. When they refused to tell her, she accused them of helping me disappear. They called security. That was the moment the illusion shattered for her. She couldn't bully her way into control anymore. A week later, she came to my door. I don't know how she found my new address. Only that desperation makes people reckless. I watched her through the peephole, pounding softly at first, then harder. "Linda," she cried, "please, just talk to me." I didn't open the door, because for the first time, silence was my answer. But Diane wasn't done. She had one last move planned, one that would force me to decide whether peace was enough, or if I was finally ready to tell the whole truth. And when I found out what she did next, I realized my quiet exit had only been the beginning. I thought the worst was over once I refused to open the door. I was wrong. My sister Diane didn't want reconciliation. She wanted control. And when she couldn't reach me privately, she decided to punish me publicly. It started with a phone call from a coworker. "Linda," she said carefully, "is everything okay? Diane just posted something about you online." My chest tightened. I hadn't used Facebook in years, but when I logged in, her post was the first thing I saw. Long, emotional, carefully written to make her the victim. She said I had abandoned family. She said I had set up her children to be arrested. She hinted that I was unstable, cold, and hoarding wealth while her kids suffered. Hundreds of comments followed. People who didn't know me called me cruel. Others told her she was brave for speaking out. Relatives I had protected for decades stayed silent. That was the moment something shifted in me. Not anger, clarity. I called a lawyer the next morning. I brought screenshots, police reports, text messages, security logs from my old building, the changed locks, the forced entry report. The lawyer looked at me and said, "You've been more patient than most people would be." Within a week, Diane received a formal cease and desist letter. No more posts, no more lies, no more contact. She ignored it. So we escalated. The second letter outlined defamation, harassment, trespassing. It included timelines, evidence, and the words potential civil liability in bold. That one scared her. The posts disappeared overnight. The calls stopped. Family members began reaching out quietly, not to apologize, but to ask if I was really serious. Yes, I was. 3 months later, I sold the penthouse. I didn't tell anyone. I moved again, this time not out of fear, but out of freedom. A place with sunlight, a small balcony, and neighbors who respected closed doors. Diane tried once more to contact me through a cousin. I sent one message back. "I wish you well. Do not contact me again." And that was it. No shouting, no revenge speech, no dramatic confrontation. Just a door that stayed closed. I used to believe family meant endurance, that love was proven by how much you tolerated. Now I know better. Family is respect, and peace is worth protecting, even if it means standing alone. My name is Linda. And I don't regret a single thing. People expect revenge to be loud. They imagine yelling, lawsuits, public apologies, tears on doorsteps. That wasn't my ending. 6 months after everything went quiet, I ran into a neighbor from my old building. We stood in line at a coffee shop exchanging polite smiles like strangers do. She recognized me first. "You used to live in the penthouse," she said. "The one with the view." I nodded. She hesitated, then leaned closer. "Your sister still asks about you sometimes. The staff won't tell her anything." I smiled, not out of spite, but relief. "That's good," I said. "I hope she finds her own way." And I meant it. Because the truth is, I didn't win by watching Diane fall apart. I won the moment I stopped explaining myself. I sleep better now. I lock my door and feel safe. I eat dinner without bracing for a phone call that ruins the evening. Most of all, I trust myself again. If you're watching this and wondering whether it's too late to choose peace, it isn't. If you're afraid of being called selfish for setting boundaries, you will be. And if you're waiting for permission to protect your life, this is it. My name is Linda. I didn't destroy my family. I simply stopped letting them destroy me. My name is Carol, and I never thought I'd have to defend my own existence inside my own home. After my husband passed, the house felt too quiet. I was grieving, lonely, and vulnerable, and my son noticed. He suggested he and his wife move in for a little while, to help, to keep me company, to make sure I wasn't alone at my age. I said yes. That was my first mistake. At first, they were polite, helpful, almost too helpful. My daughter-in-law reorganized my kitchen without asking. My son started paying the utility bills and announcing it loudly, as if it earned him authority. Then the language changed. "When we renovate? When we sell one day? You don't really need this room, Mom." I laughed it off. Until one night, I overheard them talking in the living room, not whispering, just assuming I was asleep. "She doesn't need the house anymore," my daughter-in-law said. It'll be easier once everything's in our name, my son replied. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs. They weren't talking about after I died. They were talking about now. Suddenly, I needed permission to have guests. They complained about my routines. They suggested I move into the smaller bedroom for safety. That's when I realized something terrifying. They weren't helping me age with dignity. They were managing me out of my own life. So I stopped arguing. I started documenting bank statements, conversations, text messages, every comment about power of attorney, every joke about selling the house. And then I made an appointment, not with family, but with a lawyer. What happened next stunned everyone, especially my son. Because the day we went to court, I didn't look like a confused old woman. I looked prepared. People assume silence means forgiveness. That was the next mistake my family made. A year passed after I cut contact with Diane. Birthdays came and went. Holidays slipped by without invitations or arguments. For the first time in my adult life, no one demanded explanations from me. At first, the quiet felt unnatural, like waiting for thunder that never comes. Then it felt like peace. I redecorated my new place slowly, not to impress anyone, just small choices that were mine alone. A chair by the window, plants that only I watered, a routine that didn't require negotiation. And yet, family has a way of testing boundaries when they think enough time has passed. It was my niece who reached out first. She sent a long message filled with careful wording, apologies that weren't really apologies, responsibility spread thin like butter over toast. Aunt Linda, Mom's been having a hard time. She's not doing well financially. She really misses you. I read it twice, then once more. I noticed what wasn't there. No acknowledgement of the break-ins, no mention of the police, no accountability for the lies, just longing and expectation. I replied with one sentence. I hope she finds stability. I'm not available. That was when the pressure resumed, quietly this time. Cousins checking in, old friends, just wondering. Someone leaked my phone number to Diane again. She left one voicemail. Her voice sounded older, smaller, but still sharp around the edges. I don't understand how you could turn your back on blood, she said. After everything, you owe me at least a conversation. I deleted it. Because here's what I finally understood. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted access. Months later, I learned Diane had tried to rent an apartment in my old building. She told the leasing office she was reconnecting with family. They declined. Apparently, my name still carried weight there. That knowledge didn't make me smile. It made me grateful. Grateful that I had chosen myself when it mattered. I don't tell people this story to be admired. I tell it because women my age are taught to shrink, to excuse, to endure. I didn't. My name is Linda, and I didn't just leave a penthouse. I left a role I was never meant to play. I didn't expect to ever see Diane again. Not in person. Not after everything. But life has a way of circling back when you least want it to. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was leaving my building with a grocery bag in one hand, keys in the other, thinking about nothing more than what I'd cook for dinner. That's when I heard my name. Linda. I froze. I knew that voice the way you know the sound of something breaking. Instantly, viscerally. She stood across the street, thinner than I remembered, her coat too big for her frame. Her hair was grayer, pulled back tightly, like she was trying to hold herself together by force. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she crossed the street. I just want 5 minutes, Diane said quickly, as if rehearsed. I won't follow you. I won't make a scene. I considered turning around. Instead, I said, 3. We sat on a bench near the corner, public, neutral, safe. She talked first, about how hard things had been, how the kids blamed her, how she'd lost friends. She spoke as if the damage had happened to her, not because of her. I never meant for things to go that far, she said finally. I just needed help. I nodded slowly. I helped, I said. You took. She flinched. I'm your sister, she whispered. Family doesn't do this to each other. I looked at her then, really looked, and I realized something that surprised even me. I felt nothing, no anger, no guilt, no urge to explain, just distance. I didn't do anything to you, I said calmly. I stopped letting you do things to me. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a second, I saw the sister I used to defend. Then she said the one thing that ended it. You could still help me, she said, just until I get back on my feet. There it was, the access, the expectation, the old pattern knocking again. I stood up. This is goodbye, I said. She grabbed my sleeve. Linda, I stepped back. If you come to my home again, I continued evenly, I'll involve the police. No warnings this time. She stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. I walked away without looking back. That night, I slept deeply. No dreams, no second guessing. Because closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. My name is Linda. And this time, when the past reached for me, I didn't flinch. After that day on the bench, something strange happened. Nothing. No calls, no messages, no surprise appearances. Weeks passed, then months. Diane vanished from my life the way she should have years earlier. Not with an apology, not with understanding, but with acceptance that the door was finally locked. I didn't celebrate. I settled. That's the part people don't talk about, how peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives slowly, like your body unclenching after years of bracing for impact. I stopped checking my phone so often. I stopped replaying conversations in my head. I stopped wondering what version of me was being discussed in rooms I no longer entered. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded once. It was Diane's handwriting. She wrote that she was moving out of state, that things hadn't worked out, that she hoped, someday, I might understand she'd only been trying to survive. I read it carefully. Then, I put it back in the envelope and placed it in a drawer I rarely open, not as a reminder, but as proof. Proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. Proof that standing firm doesn't always bring remorse, but it does bring resolution. I didn't reply. Instead, I went for a walk. The city looked different than it used to. Or maybe I did. I noticed things now. The way the afternoon light hit the buildings, the sound of people living lives that had nothing to do with mine. For decades, I believed my purpose was to absorb chaos so others could stay comfortable. I was wrong. My purpose was never sacrifice. It was stewardship. Of my time, my space, my dignity. I don't tell this story because I'm proud of cutting someone off. I tell it because too many women my age are still waiting for permission to choose themselves. You don't need permission. You don't need agreement. And you don't need to be understood by people who benefited from your silence. My name is Linda. I didn't get revenge. I got my life back. And that was more than enough. Time didn't heal everything. It clarified it. 2 years passed after Diane moved away. Long enough for her name to stop tightening my chest. Long enough for people to stop asking questions they didn't really want the answers to. Long enough for my life to feel normal. A good normal. I volunteered at the local library once a week. I joined a walking group made up of women my age, all of us carrying stories we didn't announce but recognized in each other. We laughed easily, honestly, without checking our phones every 5 minutes. One afternoon, a woman named Ruth pulled me aside after our walk. "You seem lighter than when you first joined," she said. "Like you put something down." I smiled. "I did," I told her. "A long time ago." She didn't press. She understood. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea and watched the lights come on across the city. Somewhere out there, Diane was living a life that no longer involved me, and for the first time, that thought didn't feel like loss. It felt like completion. I used to worry about how my story would be told after I was gone, whether I'd be remembered as difficult, selfish, cold. Now I know better. The people who label you that way were never keeping score fairly. I updated my will that spring. Simple, clear, no confusion, no room for interpretation. I left what I wanted to whom I wanted, and the rest went to causes that mattered to me. Control, at last, on my own terms. Sometimes I think about the penthouse, the view, the silence, the illusion that money alone could buy peace. But I don't miss it, because peace didn't come from height or walls or locks. It came from one decision: to stop negotiating my worth. If you're listening to this and standing at the edge of a choice, wondering whether it's too late, too dramatic, too selfish, let me tell you something I wish I'd learned sooner. You don't owe access to anyone who disrespects you. You don't owe explanations for boundaries. And you don't owe your future to people who only see you as a resource. My name is Linda. This wasn't the story I planned for my later years, but it's the one that finally belongs to me.